big companies and they put up big numbers, but they tend to use the people as cogs in the wheel as opposed to seeing the importance they play as human beings and contributors. And so I always admire and wish at times that I was as good at navigating my life as my grandmother was. And so that's the inspiration I draw from that, is that how much can I learn from having been in her presence and seen how she conducted herself.
Leadership, team building, personal development, effective communication. We're going to dive into so many of these areas and more. Welcome back to That Entrepreneur Show. My name is Vincent A. Lancey, and I'm honored to bring on Curtis today, a true serial entrepreneur, founder of Eureka Connect, the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship, where he helps leaders and teams outperform through strategic behavioral programs. And he's not new to the game. He's coached over 5,000 professionals, 200 plus biomedical innovations advanced. He specializes in turning science and technology into viable, impactful ventures. We had a great chat behind the scenes because I'm in my Jets cap. He's a Steelers fan, so everyone who follows football knows what the deal is there. But Curtis, I'd like to welcome you to That Entrepreneur Show.
Hey, Vincent, thanks for having me. It's my honor and pleasure to be with you. As we chatted, I think you've had an amazing journey for a young guy. You've battled through a lot. So it's always astonishing to me, to people that were on the brink of death and they come back and they do big things and help lots of people. So thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Everyone, you better buckle up because we're going to have an incredible show today. He's got a lot of experience. And as you know, we don't just talk about the wins, but how he got there. And today is brought to you by ComingAlivePodcastProduction.com to get your podcast journey started today. But before we dive into those 5,000 coaching sessions, 200 plus biomedical innovations advanced, why did you want to become an entrepreneur?
You know, Vincent, I don't know that it was a plan to be an entrepreneur. You know, I started like you. I started out at Ernst & Winnie, public accounting, and finance accounting background. I don't think as I came out of school, I had any intention of becoming an entrepreneur. I sort of thought I'd spend time at Ernst, maybe progress through, the various stages and, end up being a partner. As a matter of fact, I had a guy who was one of my bosses at Ernst, a guy by the name of Tony Cursafio. On a plane one night, we were flying back from Jamestown, New York, of all places, on Allegheny Airlines. And he pulled me in the back of the plane and he said, what do you want to do with your career? And I said, well, yeah, I really like public accounting. I get to work with very senior people and I'm in my 20s. I could see progressing through the organization, being a partner. And he never looked at me and he said, you'll never be a partner. And I'm like, well, at that moment, you're sort of stunned. And he said, look, really talented people leave and the people that can't cut it leave, which breeds a lot of mediocrity. And he said, you're not going to be able to exist within an environment of mediocrity. And I guess that was the thing that spawned me to leave. Shortly after that discussion, I took a job as the CFO at a company up in Boston, having never been to Boston. And, lo and behold, 38 years later, here I sit. So,
a Steeler fan in Boston. So that's got to be fun. So he talked about something that a lot of you listening on may have experienced, that turning point where you're in corporate and you have this aha moment where, okay, maybe I'm not following the path I should. As you transitioned, though, Curtis, from corporate to entrepreneurship, we're about to talk about your first company. What are some skills or lessons learned that you transferred over from corporate that you were able to apply to your entrepreneurial endeavors?
I think the biggest thing I've learned, Vincent, is that when you come up as sort of an accountant in finance, you think about the numbers and it's all fact and objective based, right? And my day job is I run this behavioral science company called Eureka Connect. And before getting on with you, I was just working with a husband and wife that are starting a biotech company. And it's in regenerative medicine, very bright. They're from Europe, the two of them. And they're scientists. Their genetic profiles are off the charts. Dominance, discipline, competing, authority, reflectivity, energy scores. Just, if you had to develop the perfect human beings, these two would fit that category. But when you look at learned behavior, both of them have moderate social skills. Both of them have low goodwill. Both of them low compromise. And one of them has very low accommodation. These are the factors that define what we call emotional intelligence. And what I've learned is that at the end of the day, it's about relationships. And so many of the leaders that I work with don't understand, not all of them, many of them do, but not all of them understand the importance of building a connection that is the foundation for trust. It will set you up for success. And so I think the thing that I've learned most in my life and that we try to impart on people as part of the Eureka Connect offering is that as you develop, collect people, not things, collect relationships. Always strive to deepen and strengthen the relationship with those that you work with, whether they work within your organization or outside. And it will serve you well, no matter what it is you want to pursue.
I can certainly attest to that as well. I didn't really start making money until I stopped focusing on the money, right? Focusing on building these relationships, these connections. And then before you know it, oh, I got a guy. You got to go talk to Vince, right? All of those things. Those are very great points. So now let's go through this chronological entrepreneurship journey. Your first company, what was it?
A company called Staff Support and On Duty. They were a temporary placement for medical professionals, LPNs, X-ray techs, nuclear med techs. So we're working with predominantly hospitals and nursing homes. It's a tough business. It's dollars for hours. It's working with people that aren't full-time. They're part-time employees. Many of them are trying to pick up shifts. Many of them can't get jobs other places. It's an interesting business because cash flow stinks. It ebbs and flows based on market dynamics so that, you could be killing it one moment and struggling the next. But it was a good business for me to cut my teeth on. We bought a bunch of small companies. Why a bunch of investors thought a 20-some-year-old could figure out how to buy companies and assimilate them into a larger entity, I don't know. But they did. We ended up selling the company off. We got the money back for the investors. They made a little profit, not enough to brag about. But, I learned the pressures of working with investors who were very demanding. I learned how to deal with people. We had hundreds of nurses and X-ray techs and nuclear med techs working for us, and that you can imagine the types of personalities we encountered. And so I learned a lot about people. I learned about running a business. I learned about expectations of investors. And that was my first foray into entrepreneurship.
Wow. Well, congratulations on a successful exit. Now, looking back, though, as this very successful entrepreneur that you are, what are some things you would have done differently with that first venture, now having all the knowledge you collected?
Picked a different business. Not done that one. I don't know. I don't regret it because it was tough. It forced me to learn things that I wouldn't have learned had it been easier. If it had been an easy path, I wouldn't have developed the resilience. I wouldn't have developed certain skills and abilities and insights that I think served me well in other businesses. I had businesses that I thought were easier businesses that failed because of market dynamics that I couldn't control. And so I don't know that I would have changed a whole lot. I think I've been very fortunate. I'm never going to look back and say something that was difficult wasn't worth me having to experience.
I absolutely love that. And to be this entrepreneur you are, leadership is something that you're an expert in, right? You're able to help people along that. You had to develop yourself as a leader. What are some positive or strong leadership traits that you possess that we can encourage our audience to slowly adapt if they want to become the successful entrepreneur you are?
I think that many people, when they foray into their first leadership experience, they focus on managing the situation, manage the budget, manage the people, deliver the outcomes, right? And when you get to work with as many leaders as I have and as many gifted people as I've gotten to work with over the years, you realize that great leaders don't manage situations. They teach their team how to think. And what I mean by that is that if I surround myself with people that are very adept at understanding the situation, defining the problem with accuracy, and taking action to get the outcomes that are needed, then it elevates me as a leader to a more strategic thinker. I don't get pulled into the tactical nuance of the day or the organization. And great leaders, they figure that out. They figure out that you don't have to directly delegate something if somebody takes on the responsibility to define it and solve it before it gets to you. And I think we do a disservice within industry today where we don't teach people how to think. We teach them how to do. And if you look in, I'm a fan of reading history, presidential history, biographies. Most great leaders have spent quite a bit of time thinking before taking action. Their days aren't filled with action. And so I schedule time every week to just think. blocks of sometimes 3 or 4 hours where I don't have calls to make or emails to read or documents to write. It's just taking some time to sort of think through, where am I in a moment in time with all the things on my plate? Where do I need to put an emphasis of time and effort? Who else do I need help from? That's another problem I think that leaders have, is that early on, they don't want to admit that they don't know. And the older I get, my dad always used to say, "The son, you don't know what you don't know." On his deathbed, he said that to me. As I get older, I realize that you don't know a whole lot. There's so much, especially in a world that's as dynamic as this is the one we're living in.
So many great points. And I too live by that statement. You don't know what you don't know. It encourages you to keep pushing yourself and learn. And when you think you're the smartest in the room, or like, I got my MBA, young guy getting a bunch of speaking gigs, blah, 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 you realize you're not, right? Once you realize that you can learn something from every single person in every room, it goes leaps and bounds. And I don't want to breeze past the time block thing you mentioned there. I just did a post as we're recording this yesterday on 4 tips for people to get unstuck. And for me, every night before bed, this is a game changer. A bunch of years ago, I time block my meetings, and I found that productivity increases as the time constraint decreases. And it's also less stress, right? Knowing what I have to do. And I love how you also give yourself time to think, let your brain reset. In this go-go world, if we don't intentionally take time to think and grow, we're going to stay stagnant. So amazing work there. Thank you for sharing. So now we can go back to your companies and your entrepreneurial success. You sold the company, you got a few more, you put them together. What was next?
Well, then through a series of events, one of the guys that I had worked for recruited me to a consulting firm where we started working in third-party payer strategy for biopharma and device companies. And I spent 20 years of my career running a company. I actually ended up founding a company in that area called Boston Market Strategies. And we worked with a number of companies. And at one point, we added up over 400 products in various levels of, either launching them or running the life cycle of them as it relates to the reimbursement strategy with the third-party payers. We also did a lot of work in clinical trial process efficiency, which got me interested in science and technology coming out of academia. And that sort of led to this idea of Eureka Connect, which is this whole theme that you touched on earlier. How do we teach leaders to become better leaders? And my premise is that the theory of leadership is flawed in that it doesn't address the skill set of the individual. Meaning, look, you and I are football fans. If you go back to the 70s when the Steelers were in their heyday, right? And when they were a dynasty, Chuck Noll was very big on technique. He was about, linemen learned points of leverage. They learned that being the strongest player on the field was great, but if you could create leverage, meaning positioning with your body relative to the other player, that you had an advantage. So a lot of it is they taught the players, the linemen, leverage, which created opportunity to open holes for the running backs. Were the Steelers running backs, Rocky Bleier and Franco Harris, better than everybody else's running backs? Probably not. But the line created better holes, hence better outcomes. And I think leadership's like that. That the couple that I talked to this morning were very different personalities. They had overlapping traits, their genetics specifically. But what I talked to them about was that there was no ceiling for their success as a couple and as entrepreneurs if they figured out emotional intelligence, if they figured out relationships, if they figured out how to navigate situations. If I walk into a situation knowing that your position is different than mine, and I reject your position, and immediately I put you on the defensive, which puts you in a negative state of emotion, the chances of me convincing you that you might be another path are almost none. But if I can get you to see that I do care about your position, even though I have a different one, and you're not in a defensive posture, you'll be more open to going to what I call the 4th level of comprehension. Your mind will drift towards another path that you hadn't anticipated, and you'll do it comfortably. And that's when learning occurs.
I absolutely love that. And you had the football analogy, the 5 offensive linemen, right? Think of it like your team in the office. You're only as strong as your weakest cog in the line, right? Where's that bottleneck? He mentioned leverage, positioning, things to go above that. So I love that. Of course, I don't love the Jets' success, but I do love all things football. I'm a guy, that's like my me time. There's no working. I sit down, I get my wings, I'm on the couch. I love to watch them. And hopefully at some point in my life, we see a different outcome. But as far as business, I don't want to breeze past biomedical entrepreneurship, right? You just talked about how you got into Eureka Connect. I want to spend some time here too.
So years had gone by where I was developing teams, still do that today. It's probably 50 to 70% of my time, depending on what time of year it is. And what it led to was a friend of mine who's on my board of the IB, Henry Skinner, saying, if we're really going to do a good job in translation, we need to figure out sort of this knowledge gap where innovators understand chemistry, biology, and engineering, but they don't understand reimbursement. They don't understand market uptake. They don't understand positioning within a strategic portfolio. They don't understand regulatory or clinical pathways. They don't understand the mindset of the patient and the patient journey. When you were coming back from your situation, there was a patient journey. There were clinicians and there was physical therapy and there was, a cadre of services that you needed. And to understand that journey and how a product or a service could improve that is something that many of the innovators don't understand. So the IBE was born of the idea that we needed to close that knowledge gap. It's a 5-day graduate level program on translation. And if you took out the regulatory session, Vincent, it could work for anybody if you're trying to build any kind of business. But it's not just the teaching. The IB is a network. It's a club. It's a tribe, if you will. Going to Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe, right? It's a group of people that have come together with a common interest in advancing some idea for the benefit of mankind, from a healthcare perspective. And having a group of advisors and mentors that have been there before that can help to make the right connections, give guidance, give advice. I just got back from the Netherlands where we saw 12 technologies. We work with almost all the universities over there. And it's led by Rob Mayfield, who runs the LEH, which is Leiden's venture fund. But one of the things that was extraordinary is that you're seeing these first-time entrepreneurs with these ideas. And the science and the engineering is just incredible. But they have no idea what the next step is. And to be part of the IB network of over 1,000 people that helps to provide that guidance or support is something that I can't tell you, how fortunate I am to be part of that. So that's the IB. And if people are interested, ibeinc.org, they can go to the website. My assistant, Shauna Reed, sreed at eurekaconnect.com. If you ever want to get a hold of me, go through Shauna. She can set up some time to chat with me, but they're always happy to talk to companies that want to work with their teams, help them with their teams. We work predominantly in the healthcare sector, but have done a lot of work with big Fortune 100 companies, building teams, for sort of the C-level down to director level more often than not.
I absolutely love the inspiration and that growth you shared across this episode. But in order to do that, you have to have clarity, right? I know that you contrasted your grandmother's life of purpose and clarity with CEOs you worked with. How has her example influenced the way you define success for yourself and leaders and find that clarity?
My mom's mother, Frances, was, her family immigrated from Italy. Her father died very young, was actually killed by the mafia, is the story. He fell asleep in his car on a train track. So, you do the math on that one. But she left school in the 8th grade, being the oldest daughter, to raise her brothers and her sister, and never went any more schooling, married 3 children, lost a son early on, died very young. So 3 girls and a boy, lost the boy, never had a credit card to my knowledge, never drove a car, never had a license, was devoted to helping others. That was her life. And I always look at, for a person that materially had so little, how much she accomplished, that she did so much. And I always liken it to the people that I work with that have so much materially and in my mind do so little to help others. Yeah, they have big companies and they put up big numbers, but they tend to use the people as cogs in the wheel as opposed to seeing the importance they play as human beings and contributors. And so I always admire and wish at times that I was as good at navigating my life as my grandmother was. And so that's the inspiration I draw from that, is that how much can I learn from having been in her presence and seen how she conducted herself? And can I elevate myself and those around me to that standard, which I think is far loftier than what many CEOs ascribe to?
Well, thank you for sharing that. My grandmother also played a very large role in my life. So now, everyone, we're going to revisit his website, so don't worry in just a sec. But I have to ask, Curtis, if you could choose to sit down with any entrepreneur, dead or alive, who's your choice?
I don't know that I'd pick an entrepreneur. I think, and my kids will laugh because I'm a huge fan of Abraham Lincoln. And why is it? Because I think he had an incredible burden of trying to unite a country. And at the same time, try to deal with the devastation that slavery represented to human beings, and that he made very difficult decisions
Yes,
where
he
he
did.
knew that people would die, but he believed he was serving the greater good. And I would love to see how he reconciled that thinking. And, I've read tons of books. Joyce Kearns Goodwin wrote a book, Team of Rivals, that talks about how he had surrounded himself with the most talented people that he could find, but most of them hated him. And the idea that, you build a team of people that don't like you because they possess a certain skill set. So I admire so many different facets of his life and would love to just sit down and talk to him about, what were you thinking when this situation came up? And I think that's telling, as somebody that did what he did in his lifetime, that would lend to, I believe, understanding how to become a better leader, if not even a better person, right?
I love the choice. I'll call him an entrepreneur. If present day, he would have brand management, right? He'd have these accounts running. So love the choice, Curtis. Thank you so much for joining us here on That Entrepreneur Show. Everyone, be sure to subscribe to stay current with our community of entrepreneurs. But I'd like you to please share your website or any other way to get in touch with you that you feel comfortable with.
EurekaConnect.com is our behavioral science company. And again, Shauna Reed, S. Reed at EurekaConnect.com if you want to reach out to me and get a hold of me. Also, ibeinc.org is the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship. We have a December program in Cambridge. It's a 5-day program on entrepreneurship. There's a fee to it, but contact us so we can work with you on that front. But again, it's a graduate level program designed by people that were familiar with the Stanford, Dartmouth, University of North Carolina, and MIT programs. So, the best of all worlds come together in helping people become better entrepreneurs, and would love to see people attend if they'd like to learn more.
Sounds like a can't miss event. Everyone, be sure to reach out to this entrepreneur today. He is a great resource to have in your network. As he mentioned, a few companies that can add value to your life. My name is Vincent A. Lancey, and I want to thank everyone for keeping the show a top 2.5% global show. And we're brought to you by ComingAlivePodcastProduction.com. And with that, we're signing off today. Curtis, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode. I would love to hear your feedback. What did you love? What do you want to see more of? Are there any questions you would like me to ask the guests who come on the show? This show is not possible without you, the amazing listeners, so please email us at podcastbylancey@gmail.com and let us know what you think. We'll also feature you on a later show. Please remember to subscribe to stay current with our amazing community of guests who will continue to come on the show, sprinkled in with solo episodes from me, Vincent A. Lancey. With that, I look forward to introducing more shows to you each and every week. And with that, we're signing off today. Enjoy the episodes and make it a great day ahead.